A woman vanished for 62 days, then suddenly reappeared inside her own home. No one knows how she got back, and she can't remember what happened. But the strangest part? For 2 whole months, the house was never locked. No signs of a break-in. No security footage of anyone coming or going. Yet somehow, Susan Rhodes, 66 years old, had been out there, somewhere alive, silent, right in the middle of the very neighborhood that was searching for her every single day. Was it memory loss? Did someone help her or hold her captive? And the question that kept thousands of people awake at night, how can someone disappear while still being in their own home? This is a story about silence, fear, and the one thing we never want to believe could be real. Edgefield County, South Carolina, a quiet countryside with endless fields and dusty red roads that go eerily still by late afternoon. This isn't the kind of place where strange or tragic things usually happen. But then Susan Rhodes became the kind of mystery one could explain. She lived alone in a small house at the end of a wooded road nearly 5 miles from town. To her neighbors, Susan was the sweet art teacher, also retired middle school educator with over 30 years in the classroom. With silver hair and a voice soft as morning wind, she spent her mornings watering flowers, reading on her porch, or chatting with kids walking by on their way to school. She had no children. Her marriage ended nearly 20 years ago. The only regular visitor was her housemate, Alice, a longtime friend from college, now in her 60s, as well, with whom she shared both rent and quiet companionship over the years. No one ever thought Susan had enemies. No debt. No serious medical issues. No one in her life who would ever raise suspicion. So when someone like that disappears, it shakes a bus. Community. Not because she was famous, but because she was so completely ordinary. She was just the kind of person you always assumed would be there the next morning. So, neighbors said. But on June 11th, Susan didn't show up on her usual porch seat. The flowers in her yard were wilting. The newspaper lay untouched. And in a place where everyone knows everyone, that was as loud as a siren. What made it even stranger was that no one could say for sure the last time they actually saw her. Even though she lived out in the woods, Susan wasn't isolated. Every Sunday, she attended Mount Olive Church, predominantly black congregation where she not only came to pray, but quietly taught kids how to draw, helped bake cookies for Easter, and often gave rides home to elderly church members. There was something about Susan that made people feel seen, like she truly listened, never judged. She had this way of looking at you like you were the most important person in the room, said one pastor. That gentleness is exactly what made her disappearance so hard to comprehend. How could someone so kind, so well loved, just vanish? In broad daylight? Why weren't there screams? Flashlight beam, a trail of footprints or tire marks? No calls, no clues. But then, as the search dragged on, people began whispering about something not even her housemate knew. Lately, Susan had been having blank moments. Once, she left the faucet running for over an hour. Another time, she called her bank about an account that had been closed since 2009. No one thought much of it, just signs of aging. But put together, it seemed like something was beginning to change. And there was one thing even her own family didn't know. About Susan Rhodes, she had disappeared once before, back in 1997, just for a few hours. No one ever figured out why. And just like now, she came back quietly, without ever explaining what had happened. June 11th, 2025, started like any other day. The sun was soft, the air thick and still, just another quiet morning in Edgefield County. Susan got up early, walked a loop around her yard like she always did, wearing her beige jacket and that old cloth hat she called her birdwatching cap. Around 8:30 a.m., she drove off in her silver 2012 Toyota sedan, a car she took meticulous care of. Security footage from a convenience store 4 miles away showed her buying a bottle of water, a granola bar, and a roll of medical tape. The cashier said she seemed a little spacey, but still polite. At exactly 10:02 a.m., Susan made her final phone call to Alice, her housemate. Alice described it as confused, whispering, full of static, like she was trying to say something, but just couldn't get it out. Then the phone went dead. At almost the same moment, a passerby called local police to report a silver car off the road lying in a ditch at the forest's edge. By the time responders arrived, the car was empty. No blood, no scattered papers. Her purse was still on the passenger seat. Inside, her reading glasses, wallet, and the water she'd just bought. Everything intact, but no sign of Susan. The surrounding woods were searched by ground, drone, and search dog. Nothing. No one saw her leave the car. No roadside camera picked up her movements. It was as if the forest had swallowed her whole. A 66-year-old woman with a bandaged arm walked into the woods and vanished. Something was clearly wrong, but no one could say what or where it began. When authorities arrived at the scene where Susan's car was found, no one expected it would mark the beginning of a mystery that would last for months. Her Toyota Camry lay tilted in a shallow ditch, though a front bumper slightly dented, as if it had slid off the road just minutes earlier. But inside, nothing. No person, no sound, and not a single sign that Susan had left the vehicle. In any normal way, the doors were unlocked. Her purse, reading glasses, wallet, and phone, all still resting on the passenger seat. An unopened roll of medical tape, a bottle of water, untouched. The detail that baffled investigators the most, the car hadn't crashed violently. No airbags deployed, no blood, no footprints leading away. Nothing out of place, except for one neatly folded handkerchief lying at the edge of the door, as if she'd simply stepped out and vanished into thin air. From that moment on, the entire community went into high alert. Edgefield police, local rescue teams, and volunteers launched the largest search operation the town had ever seen. Helicopters circled overhead. Search crews fanned out from the ditch in every direction, covering a 5-mile radius. They combed through thick brush, searched ravines and abandoned sheds in the woods. In the first 72 hours, nearly 100 people joined the effort. Flyers were printed and plastered across corner stores, churches, telephone poles. Local social media was flooded with posts. Where is, shit says, who last saw her? Are the police doing enough? But every lead vanished into silence. No traffic cam caught the car before it veered off. No gas stations reported seeing her. No one claimed to have seen her walking. Day 4 passed. Week 2 began, and fear crept in. If someone like Susan can disappear without a trace, a neighbor said during a community prayer, then who among us is safe? Then came the twist that changed everything. Susan's phone, still tucked in her bag, had connected to Wi-Fi the night of her disappearance. Not at the crash site, but at her house. Once that was confirmed, every theory went up in smoke. Her home had been sealed off. No one was supposed to be inside. Police checked all nearby surveillance footage and discovered the west-facing camera, the one that captured the driveway entrance, had been offline since that morning. Coincidence or tampering? The deeper they looked, the more questions surfaced. Susan's housemate, Alice, told police she had left early that morning to visit family in Colombia. But phone data showed she was still in Edgefield at 9:47 a.m., just 15 minutes before Susan's car was found in the ditch. When confronted, Alice paused for several seconds, then replied, "I must have gotten my times mixed up. I left later than I thought." The hesitation raised red flags for investigators. Was Alice hiding something? Still, there was no evidence of a crime. The pale green 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom home showed no signs of forced entry. The front door was locked. No signs of a struggle. Nothing was missing. But one neighbor, 2 houses down, said something that sent chills through the block. Around 8:30 p.m., the night of the crash, they saw the altered bathroom light in Susan's house turn on, then off. 5 minutes later, they assumed it was police or someone checking the house. But when investigators checked, no officers, no responders had entered the home that night. No one on record, no official search. Just a single light turned on, then off, and whoever did it was never seen. That sparked a chilling theory. Did someone bring Susan back home? Had she been hidden there and someone slipped away unnoticed? Or worse, had she never left in the first place? The search continued over the following days, but the hope had faded. Community dinners turned into tense whispers. Flyers yellowed in the sun, layered over old posters, like a symbol of fading memory. Police issued an official statement. No signs of foul play. No evidence of forced entry. No clear leads. But for those who knew Susan, that answer felt hollow, because there was one thing that haunted everyone. No one had ever heard a scream. Not one. Susan's house sat in a quiet neighborhood, just 130 feet from the nearest neighbor. A barking dog could echo down the street. So if she was in danger, why didn't anyone hear her? Police suggested she might have been disoriented after the crash, wandered into the woods, and gotten lost. But that didn't explain the phone connecting to her home's Wi-Fi. There was no explanation, unless someone had brought the phone back on purpose. One volunteer, Marcus, a former firefighter, recalled, "When I walked the tree line behind Susan's house, I swear I felt someone watching me, but there was nothing there. Just silence. Too much silence." At a church prayer gathering during the third week, an elderly woman broke down in tears. "I keep thinking, if I had stopped by sooner, if I'd noticed that bathroom curtain moved that night, maybe she wouldn't have had to go through it alone." It was the moment the community realized maybe Susan's disappearance wasn't about something complex. Maybe it was about the tiniest things we overlook. A missed call, a strange light, a sound no one bothered to check. And that, more than any crime, is what makes this story so terrifying. When a good person goes missing, not because someone took her, but because no one was truly listening when she needed help. Nearly a month after Susan vanished, it seemed as if her case had quietly slipped into the shadows. Search teams thinned out. News coverage stopped. The house was returned to her roommate, Alice, who now lived there alone. But then, an anonymous call changed everything. The caller was a young woman named Jasmine, a former delivery driver who'd worked in the Edgefield area. She said that on the morning of the crash, around 9:20 a.m., she dropped off a package at the house next to Susan's. As she returned to her car, she noticed a silver-haired woman sitting on the front steps of Susan's house. She looked panicked, but didn't say a word. Jasmine assumed it was just a relative, but when she saw Susan's photo on the news days later, she said she was almost certain it was the same woman. If true, this upended everything. It meant Susan had made it home that same morning, but no one realized she needed help. Police reviewed Alice's statement again. She maintained no one had been in the house from morning until late that day. But now the question was, if Susan did come home, who let her in? And if she got inside, why didn't she call for help? Why didn't she call 911? Why didn't she reach out to a neighbor? Then came another troubling discovery. Phone records showed a missed 911 call made from the landline inside the house at 9:51 a.m. The call lasted only 3 seconds, then cut off. When asked, Alice denied any knowledge of it. She claimed she hadn't used the landline in weeks, and it was usually left on silent. But the data was clear. Someone in that house had tried to call for help, and then silence. With this revelation, police were forced to re-examine the home's surveillance system. This time they noticed something they'd missed before. The hard drive storing footage from the backyard, cameras had been overwritten on the very morning of the crash. Now, that wasn't unusual. Many residential systems only kept footage for 24 to 48 hours, but this system was configured to store 7 full days. The technician who'd installed it confirmed, "I set it to record 7 days straight. If it's only holding a few hours, someone accessed it and wiped it." While police couldn't confirm who had, done it, another unexpected lead surfaced from the local hospital. A nurse named Carla, who worked night shifts in Edgefield's ER, called the tip line. She said she'd seen Susan, not on the day she vanished, but 3 days earlier. Susan had come in complaining of dizziness and brief confusion. She told the nurse she felt like she'd woken up in a place that didn't feel familiar. After 2 hours of observation, she signed a voluntary discharge and left. Hospital records confirmed the visit. But the most suspicious part wasn't Susan's condition. It was who brought her in. According to the intake form, she'd arrived with a part-time caregiver, listed as R. Smith. No address, no phone number, no medical record. That name had never appeared in any of Susan's files. Her family, friends, even Alice, all said, "We've never heard that name before." So who was R? Smith, a legitimate caregiver, or someone posing as one? And more importantly, if they were close enough to take Susan to the hospital, why didn't they speak up when she went missing? A new theory emerged. Maybe Susan hadn't gone missing. Maybe she'd been hidden, cared for, or kept massaged. Someone unknown to everyone else. Someone still faceless, still silent. Someone known only as R. Smith. The story of Susan Rhodes' disappearance has been told through police reports, news articles, and official statements. But one perspective remained mostly unheard. Her neighbors. The people who lived just feet away. The ones who saw, heard, and felt, but were never asked the right questions. Now we hear the story again from them. Mavis, 71, lived right next door, separated only by a white picket fence. "I saw the ambulance that morning," she said, "but the day before, I saw a man walking around her house holding something like a clipboard. I thought he was with the power company." When shown still images from another neighbor's security cam, she confirmed the man was unfamiliar. He didn't live anywhere in the area. Leonard, a retired veteran who lived on the corner, recalled, "The night Susan went missing, I kept the porch light on all night. Around midnight, I saw a flashlight beam. It moved across her bathroom window. It wasn't a house light. It was a flashlight." He didn't report it, assumed it. Was first responders checking the property, but police confirmed no teams had been dispatched to that street after 10 p.m. Whoever held that flashlight wasn't law enforcement, wasn't a volunteer. So who was it? Then there was a smaller detail, one that sent chills through every parent in the Yasto Passage neighborhood. A 9-year-old girl whose family lived behind Susan's house told her mother, "I saw someone looking through her window the day before she went away." The girl even drew a picture, a blurry face, no clear features, but pressed right up against the glass. The adults brushed it off. Child's imagination. But in this case, no detail was too small to matter. These fragments, when pieced together, revealed something haunting. Susan was not alone. Someone had been circling her home, before and after her disappearance. And if all of this is true, then maybe, just maybe, Susan Rhodes was never lost in the woods. Maybe someone made sure she stayed hidden, right in the middle of the people who thought they knew her best. Up until this point, the investigation had focused on two theories: that Susan had wandered into the woods and disappeared, or that someone had taken her and hidden her away. But then, a forgotten hospital document was uncovered, and it changed everything. It was a nurse's intake form written by Carla, the same nurse who had seen Susan days before her disappearance. In the section labeled "accompanied by," a scribbled name had originally been interpreted as R. Smith. But when investigators examined the original document closely, the handwriting could very well read A. Rhodes. A as in Alice. Rhodes. The same last name as Susan. Police immediately returned to interview Alice, the roommate who had previously stated she had no knowledge of the hospital visit and claimed she wasn't even in town that morning. When shown the form, Alice fell silent for nearly a full minute. Then she began to cry. "I just wanted what was best for her," she said. "I never thought it would go this far." In her revised statement, Alice admitted she had accompanied Susan to the hospital Susan had confided in her about episodes of disorientation and a creeping fear that someone was watching her. Alice convinced her to get checked out. But when the doctor suggested early signs of dementia, Susan panicked. They left the hospital. That night, Alice said, Susan was restless, pacing the house, unable to sleep. Alice, exhausted, took a sleeping pill. When she woke up, Susan was gone. But here's where the story takes a sharp turn. Medical records confirmed that A. Rhodes had signed Susan's discharge papers, acting as next of kin or legal guardian. Alice had never disclosed this. Why would she hide her role? The answer wasn't in the law. It was in the emotion. In a private interview with investigators, Alice said, I thought she needed to rest, to get away from everything. She told me, I don't feel like I'm in control anymore, and I didn't stop her. I never thought she'd go this far. It wasn't a criminal confession, but it raised a deeper question. Alice, the one person who lived with Susan, the last to see her, the one who signed her release, was she really innocent, or had everyone overlooked her simply because she was too familiar? When Alice admitted she had taken Susan to the hospital and signed in her name, the community was stunned. But what made the revelation worse was that police had been told her name as early as the first week, and they had dismissed it. Why? An internal report recorded a conversation between two detectives. Alice, no way. They've been friends forever. Church ladies. She's a sweet old woman. Doesn't even drive. In a place like Edgefield, where suspects are often imagined as threatening, troubled, or with a criminal past, a white-haired retiree with no car and a quiet manner was almost automatically ruled out. Police never monitored Alice, never searched the house again, never checked her computer or phone, never questioned her after the first 24 hours. Why? Because she looked genuinely heartbroken. This wasn't just a procedural slip. It was a classic example of investigative moral bias, assuming innocence based on appearance. Alice was the kind of person no one suspected, so no one looked. But it was that very silence, that very normalcy, that caused the case to stall for nearly 2 months. When the investigation reopened, another detail sent chills down the spine. Alice, who supposedly had no way to get around, had kept up with all the household bills while Susan was missing. The payments were made from their joint account, one that listed both names, which meant Alice had full access to Susan's financials and was actively using them, even while claiming she was too shaken to do anything. When asked why she didn't report Susan missing right away, Alice said, I thought she needed time alone. Susan once told me if she ever wanted to disappear, she'd make sure no one could find her. That statement, perhaps sincere, raised one final haunting question. For this chapter, was Alice protecting her friend, or was she protecting something only she knows? August 8th. Exactly 62 days since Susan Rhodes vanished. A 901 call came in from a familiar address, her own home. The voice on the other end was faint, raspy. I think I'm the one they're looking for. When responders arrived, they found Susan, curled up on the bathroom floor under dim light. She was frail, severely dehydrated, her hair matted, dressed in a faded nightgown with worn shoulders. She was rushed to the local hospital. Doctors confirmed extreme fatigue, dehydration, and temporary memory loss. But the real mystery wasn't just her condition. It was how she got back. The front door was locked from the outside. No signs of a break-in. No camera caught her return. No neighbors saw her walking. No drivers reported dropping her off. No friends, no family, no healthcare workers involved. Susan was simply back, as if she had never left. When asked where she'd been for the past 62 days, Susan looked down and slowly shook her head. I remember trees. I remember water. Then, I remember the ceiling light. That was all. No names, no locations, no time frame. Psychiatrists believed it could be dissociative amnesia, a rare condition triggered by psychological trauma, where the brain disconnects from reality. But even if that explained her memory loss, Who brought her home? And why did they leave without a trace? During a medical exam, doctors noticed a faded bruise across her left palm, the kind left by a tightly pulled cord. Old, not life-threatening, but deep enough to raise questions. When asked about it, Susan whispered, "I think someone kept me, not to hurt me, but because they thought I shouldn't leave." The words were vague, but chilling. Did someone hold her somewhere, or did Susan choose to vanish? With someone's help, when her health stabilized, investigators pressed her on every remaining clue: the car, the house, the 911 call, the strange lights that night. But then something else surfaced from an unexpected place. While cleaning the backyard storage shed, a young volunteer found an old pair of shoes, faded gray canvas, sneakers frayed at the heels, placed neatly on a dusty shelf, but soaked in the scent of earth, moss, and tree bark. The strange part, these were the same shoes Susan had reported missing back in 2016. She'd once told friends they were her favorite walking shoes, lost during a picnic nearly a decade ago in a forest over 20 miles from her home. And now, here they were, not in a closet, not in a box, but back in the house, just as she returned. When asked, Susan stared at them in silence. Then, almost inaudibly, she said, "I remember wearing them recently, in the woods." Then someone said, "Put them back. They won't notice." The room fell silent. Who said that? Was it real or a fractured memory? And, more disturbingly, where had the shoes been for 9 years? Investigators turned their attention to the forest where Susan said she lost them years ago. They brought dogs, cameras, maps, but found nothing. No campsites, no footprints, just trees. Still, endless. Yet at the edge of a creek, the same spot where Susan once picnicked, something strange appeared, a handkerchief, folded neatly atop a mossy rock. It matched the kind found in Susan's car the day of the accident. No one knew how long it had been there. No one saw who left it. But stitched in the corner were 2 initials, SR, Susan Rhodes. The handkerchief was hers. Police collected it for testing. No foreign DNA. No other fingerprints. No definitive evidence. Just one terrifying coincidence: the shoes she lost 9 years ago returned, on the same day she returned. And now the question echoes through the minds of detectives and everyone watching: what really happened during those missing days? And if someone brought her back, how long had they been living alongside her, unseen? 2 months after Susan Rhodes was found alive, her case was officially closed. No charges filed. No suspects named. The final police report ended with a cold, clinical line: insufficient evidence to indicate criminal activity. Alice remained in the house, now emptier, quieter than ever. Susan moved in with her niece in another state, far from the media. She refused all further interviews. She remembers little beyond fragments, daylight, filtering through curtains, a deep voice repeating, "You're safe now," and the unshakable feeling that someone was always behind her. None of it was evidence. None of it made the report. But it was enough to keep the people around her up at night. In Edgefield, folks don't talk about the disappearance much anymore. The flyers are gone. The misspelled Missing Susan Rhodes poster still lies, curled in a corner of the old church meeting room. But some things can't be taken down. The bathroom light that turned on after dark. The flashlight beam that drifted past a window at midnight. The handkerchief embroidered with her name found in the forest. And the shoes, the ones that came back 9 years after they vanished. They're still here. No explanation. No closure. In towns like Edgefield, people learn to forget quickly, because if you carry everything, you eventually forget how to live. But Susan's story wasn't like the others. She didn't just vanish from the world. She was left behind in her own home, inside her own community. Maybe no one meant for it to happen, but no one can say they did everything they could to stop it either. Because sometimes the scariest thing isn't that. Something out there is watching you. It's that everyone saw you, and still didn't really see you. Susan's story has no clear villain, no elaborate crime, only a long chain of small failures, born from exhaustion, oversight, and the quiet assumptions we never question. Old people get confused. Lifelong, friends don't hurt each other. A 66-year-old white woman living alone couldn't possibly be part of something strange. In the end, no one paid a price, but no one was truly forgiven either. And in a town like Edgefield, sometimes silence is the cruelest ending of all.